Same thing, Steve.
So I decided I was going to go with albums that I bought and listened to from
That's cool.
1993.
Yeah.
So there won't be a whole lot of progressive in this. Well,
I-
it's all
hey,
subject to people's opinion.
right.
Uh-oh.
I couldn't even find 5 albums I listened to back then when raising a family. So I had to go backwards.
I could, and I did. So
Any luck, Ron?
I think it's going.
Well, make sure you edit this out then.
Edit it out. No top secret information.
You know, they don't need to see the pregame.
Why not? All right. I think we are. Going live.
Think so?
There we are.
Oh, hi, Ron. Hi, Steve.
hi, Chuck. Hi, Ron.
Hi,
You
Chuck.
want-
Hi, Steve.
Oh, there he is. What are we doing today, Ron?
Today we're going to be talking about our favorite albums from 1993.
Doesn't matter if I was born yet.
Wait, test tube, baby.
Yeah.
So I'm going in alphabetical order because that's just easier for me. But you guys can go in any order you want. And I'm gonna start off with Anecdote.
Good one.
The first up. I got this in '94 when they came to Los Angeles to play the Prog Fest, and this is something that predates Nearfest. This is just something that was happening in Los Angeles from '93 to 2000, and then it just ended. A lot of what back then when I've heard that they were this band, they were kind of called like a King Crimson clone, but as the years go on and I'm listening to it, I see less and less of that. I see I think it's because of how the bass is kind of really prominent, like in the Red Era Crimson, and but other than that, it's very has that Scandinavian, feel to it, and very dark. It's a very dark album. I mean, especially one of the shorter songs, "Thoughts and Absence," the kind of semi-acoustic bit. I was listening to it earlier and I was watching the lyrics, and it's like, oh my God, this sounds like someone almost is about ready to end their life or something. It's really one of my favorite of that time period, because you had Anglagard, and then also one of the lesser known ones, Landberg. Now Landberg, they were around about the same time, and they disappeared, and all of their CDs have been out of print, and no one's put them back in print since the 90s. Those ones are going for a lot. And as you see, this was my little coding system back in the 90s. This meant, kind of heavy prog. And
Nice.
I could still feel there's a little bit of a film on this. So this is one of my oldest CDs of the prog stuff, and this is really good. If you like the heavy prog, without it going into the prog metal territory. At the time, you know, when grunge was pretty heavy, it kind of was fit in that area, you know. So if you were listening to grunge and you wanted to have something a little more interesting, you know, you go for something like this. And this is my first pick.
Nice.
On to you, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. That would have, like me and Ron were talking pre-show, and that would have been, well, I think I had 7 or 6 that I picked, and that would have been one of them. So in order not to duplicate it, but I'll definitely put that on an honorable mention. I love that album too, Ron. Great pick. So let me do one little different. Okay, like Steve's backstory coming up, mine's probably similar. I didn't get into prog again after raising a family till 2014. So it might be a lot later than Steve, we'll find out. But saying that, however, so out of these albums, 4 of them I'm going to mention today are going backwards, you know, after I found them. Because if I had to find 5 in 1999, I probably couldn't, because as I was telling Ron before the show, I was too busy raising kids. They were right in the prime time at 99, or 93, excuse me. So I wasn't really listening to much, but I'll talk about one later. Anyways, going back and just figuring out what I love now. That's what I have to do almost. One of them for sure is going to be Discipline. Discipline had an album. Now, if you look at Prog Archives, this is 94, but I double checked it. Right. It's actually 93. I checked Wikipedia, and our progrock.com library is 93 also. So it must have been right on the borderline. Anyway, saying that, people are going to say, what? Because that's like their first album, and it's not really their most popular one. And I understand that. But I will say this, it is the most accessible one. So when you're new, like I was at the time, you want something that just tickles your ears right away without all the, you know, the complex stuff they did later. This is a great album to start with. So I would say I did prog rock for beginners for many, 3 years before I changed that format. And that was a perfect fit for that, for people just wanting to start. So I will say that, I mean, you just jump right into that. Every song on there is to me, it's very ear candy. And this was with me not really getting into the more complex stuff yet, because I wasn't ready for it yet. But if you look into their future catalog, obviously, people are always going to talk about their later albums. When you talk about Unfolded Like a Staircase is like the one most people talk about. That's just, and it is probably their best album. But anyways, there's my first pick.
Yeah, and that one too it was of the times. Right. If you listen to more mainstream music and then went to listen to that, it kind of.
Oh yeah, and One Amendment, that was the second album, by the way, not the first. Okay, thanks. Got that wrong.
All right, Steve.
So we're going to do this a little differently. I'm going to talk about albums from 1993 that I really, really like, and even up to this day, but they're also albums that I bought in 1993. I thought about doing progressive albums from 1993, but my second introduction to progressive music did not really start till about the year 2000. So I really felt that I would be kind of cheating everybody if, hey, here's Pendragon's Window of Life from 1993 that I didn't listen to until about 2013.
Hey, now.
So I went back, although that's a great album, by the way.
Be nice to me.
I am being nice to you. That's why I said Pendragon first. So I'm going to talk about my favorite albums from 1993 that I actually owned, purchased, and listened to in 1993. See, with me, there's always a qualification. I do things a little different. And so it will be an argument, but some people who are listening may not think these are progressive albums, but I will have that argument or that discussion with you. We start with something called Black Tie, White Noise. It's a David Bowie album released in 1993. It's also known to his fans as the wedding album because the album was released just after his marriage to Iman, who was his last wife. Real cool album. It has elements of Bowie's art rock, has a lot of elements of jazz and jazz fusion. Bowie himself probably plays more saxophone on this album than any other album. He does a very excellent version of Cream's I Feel Free. Mick Ronson from the Spiders of Mars is on the guitar on that track, and it was one of the last things that Mick did before he died. The album has an R&B flavor all the way through it. The title cut, Black Tie, White Noise, is a duet that he did with Al B. Sure. The principal hit from the album that most people will know about is a song called Jump They Say, which did make the top 40 charts. I actually feel this is, in my opinion, one of Bowie's best albums.
Wow.
It's a little bit of a departure for him because he does go into a little bit more of a jazz feel. Mike Garson on piano, who's a longtime Bowie associate. He also has a jazz trumpeter on the album by the name of Lester Bowie, who is very well known in the avant-garde jazz field. Very excellent trumpet player. It's just one of my favorite Bowie albums. Even to this day, I will bring it out and listen to it cover to cover.
Cool.
Nice.
That's one I don't have, so I gotta go.
Me
snag
either.
that.
It's an album that flew under the radar up until that. Right before that point, he was in the band Tin Machine.
Right.
Oh yeah.
With the Sales
Yeah.
Brothers.
Right.
So this is yeah, it's a little bit different. It's very R&B oriented. Nile Rodgers is the producer, and he produced Let's Dance as well, but it's not as commercial as Let's Dance. And of course,
Oh no.
with my progressive leanings more toward the jazz part of things, the album appealed to me because of the jazz aspects of the album.
Oh, cool.
Hey, Steve.
All right. Well, my next one is one of the big bands in the neo-progressive field is IQ and Ever. I found out about these guys by accident when I went to Prog Fest in 1993. They had 4 bands. They had Angleguard, they had IQ, they had these 2 lesser known bands, Quill and Citadel. And those ones, I haven't heard anything from them since, but I seen, when I saw IQ come on, all of a sudden I was like, wow. I mean, up until that point, the only neo-prog bands, 2 of them that I knew of was Marillion and Pendragon. And I'm like going, I never knew about these guys. And they were very forward on their music. You know, it's like almost commercial, but they came out of their commercial phase. You know, they were and going back into the basically long form prog songs. You know, that they did in the early 80s, and it was a return of Peter Nichols.
Yeah.
And then the new bassist John Jowett, and I got to see them in '93 when they came, and I played at Prog Fest, and then I didn't know about it, but the following year in '94 they played up in San Jose at some little club, and I didn't even know about it until like 6 months, because a friend of mine went to them. But then again, he was a diehard IQ fan since the 80s, so he knew, you know, he was on their fan club list or whatever at the time. And this is that deluxe edition where they have the 2 CDs. You got the remixes, and you got the whole album live, and then you got a DVD of all that stuff. And it's my introduction to the band. And then at that point, I bought the CD at the vendor, you know, the merch table, and went and ordered up from you know, Greg Walker, the other ones that were out at the time, and been a fan ever since. And you know, they're just one of my favorite neo-prog bands.
Me too.
And actually one of my favorite prog bands from the 90s.
And still.
Still, I mean,
Mhm.
I was listening. The remixes, okay, the original mixes sound good. The remixes just take it to a new level, and it's just everything's a little. The bass is a little more punchier. Because that's one of the things I noticed in the original album, that the bass was good, but it just wasn't punchy enough. But that, if we remember, in the early '90s, the bass wasn't really like that. It kind of like the punchiness died down from the '80s stuff. Early '90s stuff wasn't so, and then just back. But yeah, it's if you're a fan of the band and you haven't got this yet, this version, you should get it. And that's my number 2 pick.
Well, that's a good time for me. Just hop on our one duplicate, because that's one of mine also to pick. One, I love IQ overall, and before I do that, just going back on the other ones real quick. I just want to say Mark Monforti, who owns progrock.com, he's going to have, you got to see him, which you're so lucky, Ron, but he's going to have Antidote probably at his house next year or soon in Chicago.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
and follow up with that, I did see Matthew Parmenter in Discipline at his house. So I was going to mention that, and I forgot to talk about that, but very, very nice. So going on to IQ, yeah, I mean, when everything's like a candy box back in 14, when I just started discovering stuff. So I mean, it was just like, wow, this was just right up my alley. I mean, Neoprog, I've been accused of loving Neoprog too much, especially by our good friend Kevin, who might be watching. But I do. I mean, that's what prog rock for beginners was too. It was Neoprog. So
Right.
basically, what can I add to you said? I mean, I didn't know at the time that anything about their history. So like you said, Peter Nichols coming back, that probably had an effect on me, because I can tell you that when, how you get an album, you go backwards in their discography, and I could have gone forward too, which I did. But I'm going to say, Are You Sitting Comfortably Numb, Non Zamo, Tales from the Lush Attic really didn't add up to that. But I have to say the Wake did. But
Yeah.
But those three, I mean, and it ever kind of gets dogged on sometimes. I see some really bad, like that's one of their, less albums. And I just listened to it this morning. It's fantastic. I don't know what people are thinking. And I guess in the last thing, I was going to say one more thing about it. How I got into them was because Subterranea, somehow I fell into that. No pun intended, but I got that. And then I watched this little, I don't know if you guys seen the B movie made about it, because I just was curious. So I watched that. So I really got into it and trying to figure it out and everything. And that was my beginning of IQ. So I just wanted to say that. That's my second one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys, have been into progressive rock before. And then, like you said, you had the family situation. But
Yeah.
for me, I was just getting into progressive rock in the early '90s. Before that, I was listening to a lot of pop, rock, and metal. That was the thing. And I was, at that point, I was, I wanted something more. So that's why. And I was huge into Neoprog from like '93 to, well, actually most of the '90s.
Well, you didn't have much choice though. I mean, the second wave was pretty much Neo, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much. There was that, but then you had the Scandinavian
Okay.
movement, which kind of like kick-started it in a way,
Okay.
before the Flower Kings, when Ronnie Stolt did his first, well, not his first solo album, but his first prog solo album, because he had stuff before that were more on the pop side, but that one kind of kick-started it. Another band, the Parlin Project, that kind of was there. So it's like a lot of different
Okay.
good stuff.
Good.
All right, Steve.
It's a good IQ choice. I saw IQ once in concert at a Rossfest. They played Subterranea start to finish, and that was the show. Amazing, just really, really incredible stuff. And obviously, if you're familiar with my Monday evening radio program, it's not really a nod to IQ, but it is a nod to IQ with the title of my radio program. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. Another album that I got in 1993 that I listened to and loved the heck out of it was Tears for Fears album called Elemental, 1993 release. To call it a Tears for Fears album is really not accurate. The two of them, Roland Orzabal, Kurt Smith, had essentially parted ways for the first time at that time. Elemental was the first album that was basically all Roland Orzabal. So it's pretty much a solo album, but he kept the Tears for Fears name, at least for this album and the one released after that, Raul and the Kings of Spain. If I have to label it, I hate putting labels on things other than good music is good music. I would put this in the category of progressive pop. Certainly shorter songs, certainly more radio friendly. The big hit from this album was Break It Down Again.
Yes.
But very much having progressive elements with shifting time signatures, shifting sound landscapes, and that kind of thing. This album to me, it's not my favorite Tears for Fears album. My favorite one is Everybody Loves a Happy Ending from the early 2000s. But there's not a bad song. There's not a bad song on this album from start to finish. He even gets into a little Beach Boy harmony. I believe the song's called Brian Wilson Said. Just really, really cool stuff from Tears for Fears.
Nice, Steve.
Yeah, that's those ones I don't have. I mean, and I've been trying to track them down, and every time they get back into print on Amazon, and then they go out of print, and then all of a sudden the prices go up through the roof.
If you're really into Tears for Fears, I'm going to recommend an album for you. It was released in 2001. It's Roland Orzabal's solo album, so it's under his name. It's called Tomcats Screaming Outside.
Thank you.
Get your hands on that and give it a listen. I think it's really astounding.
Wow. Thank you,
Oh,
Steve.
cool.
Yeah. I would say, Steve, on that album, besides the hit, I really liked Cold and Power. I really like those two songs.
Yes.
So that was one I had in real time. So there you go. Good choice.
All right. Well, my next one is Jellyfish.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Spilt Milk. I didn't get into them in '93. I got a few years later, but a friend of mine who was really into the power pop music, he says, you got to check these guys out, and I bought this, and it's like everything on it. I love everything on it. This is one of those albums, even though the songs aren't related, you got to listen to it all the way through, because it just has this kind of like a good feeling, it's like just this, it's like he used to call it kind of Beatles on steroids.
Yeah.
And I was like going, and of course, I know the new, well, kind of new band, the Licorice Quartet, but
Yes.
But this one, I mean, if you like great power pop music, and it's not dumb, it's not dumbed down stuff. I mean, you could hear a lot of the layers in the songs, New Mistake. Let's see, what was that one? Ghost of Number One. Some of my favorites on there, but I like the whole album. I bring this out every so often to listen to if I want some kind of a feel good kind of an album. That's my third pick.
Nice. I think I came across that first because I was watching something on YouTube or just something on Facebook. It was Mike Portnoy, I think, was pointing it out as one of his favorite albums. So yeah, he can sue me if that's wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was him. Anyways, That's how I found them. But yeah, great choice, Ron. So what was my next one? Oh, I know. Steve gave me a great introduction. Let's do Pendragon, Window of Life. That was one of my favorites, as I go back, because I don't have enough in real time. That is one of my favorite albums from 93. I have to have that in there. So the Window of Life, just look, if you look at the playlist, which I'm doing now, I mean, it just starts off with the Walls of Babylon and doesn't ever quit. I mean, some of the Pendragon albums, there's a few songs, especially on a couple albums, that I really don't care for that much. One of the later albums, I think in 14, but this album, there is no wasted space, no fillers. So if you want a great Pendragon album, if you're just getting into it, especially into neo-prog or second wave or whatever, I would very highly recommend The Window of Life as one to put on your list. You guys feel free to disagree.
Well, I had those years ago, and I was telling Chuck earlier that I was looking for them, and I can't find them in my CDs. I know I had it up to Masquerade Overture, and I had one of their newer ones. I can't even think what the name is. It's where they kind of like changed their sound a little bit, had a little grittier edge to it.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
I mean, they definitely were pop prog, Kowtow, or however you say it, and the Jewel.
Yeah.
Those were not what they were going to be. That started with This World in 91. That's when they started. And after that, they were just like right down my alley. And
right. Yeah, they're a good band, and, they get another band that kind of gets dumped on, I keep.
Go ahead.
They're just got a great sound.
Right. It's like IQ, same thing. Some people might say they're too neo, but I mean, if you like that, it's great. I mean,
yeah.
I think if I looked at their list here, I think Men Who Climb Mountains and Pure, not as in the first two are very poppy, but man, everything else to me, I could listen to the whole album and just really love it. I mean, I think Steve, we even talked about it once. I think I think it was you. Didn't we talk about how we both liked the world? Was it? No. What was it? Oh no, not of this world.
Yeah.
Was that was your favorite too, right? I think we said that. Or close.
Not of This World was basically my introduction to Pendragon. And then I went backwards and forwards from there.
Mine too.
They have an acoustic album. I think it's called Acoustically Challenged,
right.
Where it's Nick Barnett, Peter G on guitar, Clive on piano, and it was recorded. It was a live performance for a Polish radio station, and that's a very cool album as well. But going backwards, going forward, I just think Nick Barnett is a very excellent and extremely underrated guitar player. I just find his work, especially his improvisation, very, very tasteful and never detracting from the song. He and Gary Chandler from Jadis are two progressive rock guitar players who I think are very underrated, not so much for what they do play, but sometimes for what they don't play.
Okay.
Right.
But that's just
that was my goal.
And
go ahead.
And they both don't really sound like the typical, prog guitars. They just had kind of a little more rock, but it had a lot of feel to it.
Yeah. I was just going to say that was my go backwards too, the same as, that was my start anyways, whatever Steve did from there. But to this day, because of that, this is the wrong album, so we shouldn't be talking about it. But I mean, Man of Nomadic Traits, still my favorite song, probably always. So anyways, wrong album though, sorry.
All right, Steve, back to you again.
I kind of lean toward a Pendragon song called Indigo off of the Pure album.
That's great.
The one time I saw Pendragon again at a Rossfest, that was the opening track, and just holy shit, just absolutely blew me away. Just that single track. But I digress, as I always do. There's an awful lot of talk, as to what is not progressive music. People seem to have their own definitions as to what it is and what it is not. At my core, if a musician or a band is progressive, that means that they are always trying to evolve, always trying to do something a little bit different. And sometimes that means getting away from the 25-minute epics and going down to the 5-minute, really nicely crafted pop song. This is not a progressive album by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, this is an album by a musician who I feel is extremely progressive, because even when you see this gentleman in concert doing his hits, he likes to do his hits in a different way. This is an album by Bruce Hornsby. It's called Harbor Lights. It's the first true solo Bruce Hornsby album. Up until that point, he had been Bruce Hornsby and the Range, winning a couple of Grammys, having a couple of #1 hits. Harbor Lights was a little bit of a departure. Again, I'm going to bring up that 4-letter word jazz into the conversation, because it was showing Bruce kind of getting away from the pop song and getting a little bit longer and doing some longer jazz improvisations. Although I will tell you that probably his best known song, The Way It Is nothing more than a 2-minute pop song with an extended jazz piano solo in the middle of it. But Bruce showing off his jazz chops. He's got all kinds of people that you know on the album. Pat Metheny doing some guitar, Jimmy Haslip from the Yellow Jackets doing bass, Phil Collins even in there doing some drums and some backing vocals, Bonnie Raitt as well. Again, the songs are getting a little bit more into the jazz field with elements of jam band with improvisation in it, but not a bad song on the album. And if you've ever seen, if you've never seen Bruce Hornsby in concert, go. Because a lot of his roots anymore are back into the jam bands, the Fish, the Grateful Dead, that kind of thing. You go to a Bruce Hornsby concert and yeah, you'll hear the hits, but you may not hear the hits in the way that you know the hits. Yeah. And I think that's really cool. He's an artist that's not afraid to walk that line, trying to progress with every album. Just real cool stuff.
Yes, since I found your show, Steve, on Monday nights, I know you did play one, and I can't remember which one you played, but it was a great reintroduction to what I didn't know happened after his hits. So thank you.
Now that's the one thing, you know, when an artist has, you know, top 40 hits, and then when they don't, people forget about them, whether it's for whatever reason they forget about them. You know, someone that only follows top 40 bands will forget about their artists if they're not making, you know, that hit anymore. But if it's someone that's a really loyal follower of the band or artist, they'll know, you know. It's so.
Yeah.
But
number 4, Ron.
All right, number 4, going into the progressive metal with Threshold, Wounded Land.
Good one.
This is my introduction to Damian Wilson. And at this point, I was, you know, listening to bands like Dream Theater, you know, and I wanted to hear more of that style. And I just saw that this is the special edition one that came out on Inside Out, but I originally had the one that was on GEP, you know, IQ's label. And so I was looking at a catalog that had all the IQ, you know, the albums other than IQ on their label. And I was like, going, "Ooh, that looks pretty interesting." So I ordered it up, and I was blown away. It's like, it was prog metal, but it wasn't like all in your face. It was like it knew when and where to have that power. Like I said, this was my intro to to Damian Wilson, and also at around about the same time, he was in another band called Landmark.
Yeah.
And I like them both, but I like Threshold better because I think the production of it kind of was up, whereas the Landmark albums, they were very subdued. I mean, they were good melodic albums, but this one, every song on here, my favorite is Sanity's End and Siege of Baghdad. And it's just David Wilson's voice is just so powerful. You know, he's now in Arena, so it's like he's been in so many great bands.
Yeah.
Just when you think, and I noticed this with him, just when you think you're getting comfortable with him in the band, he bails and goes to find another band. You know, he doesn't stay put for that long. I mean, he may return to that band years later, but you know, like with Threshold, you know, he's returned to the band twice since he left it. But this is a great one. I mean, if you're really into that, you know, that prog metal, but you don't want all that, you know, that chugging guitar in your face all the time, you know, this is a great one to get.
Right.
On to you, Chuck.
Thank you, Ron. Speaking of that, just real quick, Damian Wilson, I'll say this too about him that I mean, obviously I didn't know about him back then, but we got maybe 5 real loyal chatters on our, you know, on our station, all female. So anytime Damian comes on, just let me tell you, it's very popular. He can sing anything. Anyways, my next one's going to be, okay, before I say it, a little backstory. So I got working with, you know, with Mark 140 on progrock.com. And of course he has these concerts at his house. So I'm trying to remember if it was the very first or second one I went to his house. I think it was the first time. I think it was Caribou. But anyways, we were there. And of course I was a little, you know, standoffish because I don't really know anything at this time. And I just know I like the music, and everybody was so knowledgeable at the concert, you know, because they've all been into it for a while and they all knew everything. And so one of these guys there, I remember them telling me about a group. So they're saying, hey, if you like all that stuff you're playing, I told them some of the bands I liked, you know, very neo stuff. He says, you should listen to this band. And that band was Iluvatar with an I. And they were very right down my aisle at that time. I still like them, of course, but this was their debut album, I believe, in '93. So I went to the airport when I left, and guess what I did? I downloaded it on Apple and just listened to it the whole time and really loved it. So that was the first of a few more to come. But on that album, there's 3 or 4, I think, songs on there that I just really, really love, you know. But that would be one that would be rated way up there for me this year. So.
Oh yeah, a lot of the bands that were on that label had a similar vibe to that, you know. And
I would put them in the IQ and Pendragon type, you know, neo prog alley.
Yeah, it was looking on the back of Kinesis.
Okay.
And I, at the time, you know, I was like going, okay, I had to find the label that these bands were on, and I had to seek out the label to see what else was on their catalog, and I used to blind buy so much stuff. I mean, stuff that about 5 years later, you know, they were just kind of collecting dust. So I just, you know, got rid of them. Why am I going to have them in my collection when I can have something else that I know I'm going to listen to? But that's one that from that label that I kept. Great stuff.
I think so.
All right, Steve.
First of all of your picks have been amazing. Really some great stuff that you guys are talking about. I mean, all of that. Iluvatar, Jellyfish, IQ, just really, really brilliant stuff. There is just so much great progressive music out there. All you have to do is go look for it and keep an open mind. And, you know, you will be richly, richly rewarded. Now, here I am, okay, doing something a little bit different. The 4th album I'm going to talk about is from an artist who at one time was the lead singer of the most popular band in the world, a three-piece trio known as The Police.
Yeah.
This is an album from Sting, 1993. It's called 10 Summoner's Tales. The title is a poke at his real name, Gordon Sumner. And this is, again, it's a pop album, but it's, if you listen to it, the subtle things that are done on the album, the playing, the lyrics, the time signatures, this is progressive. This at least in my imagination. Sting got a lot of people upset when he released his first solo album because, oh my God, it was a jazz album. Oh my God, he's using jazz players. Branford Marsalis on saxophone, the late Kenny Kirkland on piano. Those gentlemen were in Wynton Marsalis's first band. So he was going all jazz, and a lot of the pop people just wrote him off because, oh, he's drunk the jazz Kool-Aid and, never going to hear from him again. This particular album, the principal singer or the principal single from the album is Fields of Gold, one of his best known songs. If I Ever Lose My Faith in You was another one of the hits from the album. I'm going to focus on one particular song on the album, which is called 7 Days. First of all, lyrically, it's written in the style of 7 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Rhythmically, it's a 3-minute pop song in 7. And lyrically, am I mouse or am I man? The mirror squeaked, away I ran. It's one of the lyrics of the piece. Just brilliant writing, brilliant playing. Again, it's a straight pop album, but there are so many elements of progressive in that album. Very highly recommended.
Great pick.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember when that came out. I mean, at that time, I was still kind of more into like the heavy stuff. So later on, I could listen to it. Nowadays, I could listen to just about anything that came out in the past.
Right.
Because how do you say, open ears?
Yeah, I could go back to 91 and pick Soul Cages too. That's another good one.
Yeah.
Great one, Steve. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's that little ditty on Soul Cages that St. Agnes. It's just
Yes.
2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. Yeah, good pick.
All right, my final pick, going for really heavy, Tool and Undertow. This was their second album, right? Yeah, and actually their first full-length album. The other one was kind of like an EP, and this is the one that has that song "Sober" with that really creepy music video, that little puppet, and it's like it's almost like it was having like seizures, this thing, but it's like these guys, unbeknownst to their listeners, were a very progressive rock band. The kids, that were listening to it at the time, I had a lot of my pure metalheads friends that they were listening to this, and I'm like going, you really like this? This is kind of out of your your box, and yeah, well, it's heavy and everything. And I said, yeah, but it's not a straightforward metal. They're doing some weird stuff on here, and I think this is probably the more accessible one. After that, they kind of started getting a little more complex with their stuff. I mean, good stuff later on, but this is the most accessible one, because of that song, that one, and the oddly named one, Prison Sex. Those. I mean, they had some oddball, their last one, which is like a 15-minute. It's not really a song, but it's just a lot of weird noises called Disgustipated. And it's just, I mean, it's like you can see the back cover. It's like that looks
Oh, yeah.
not the most. I don't think this is the original cover, which is like a rib cage. I don't think it's this because it's got that parental advisory sticker right on top of it, and it earns that sticker. But it's pretty heavy stuff if you can handle that. I mean, I don't classify them prog metal by what the current standards are, because it's really is maybe dirty prog metal, because it's just prog metal meets grunge or that new metal stuff. It's pretty good stuff. It from that era of that style of music. That's my favorite band.
Nice.
All right,
Numero 5. Okay.
number 5.
All right. I'm going to play fair this time by Steve's rules. This one I actually listened to. Now, Steve, I seriously went through all the 93, and I couldn't really find anything I could really claim that I played that much because you're too busy doing other stuff. But
Right.
but you kind of cling to maybe an album or two each year. And one of those,
True.
this is controversial probably for a lot of people listening to the show, but you either hate him or love him, it seems like. And that's Neil Young, and it was his Unplugged album back in the day when MTV was doing that. And there was a lot of artists and groups that did that, but none of them really stuck with me like this one did, because he went back, and I'm a huge up to the 70s, like a lot of people, a Neil Young fan, and some after that too. But he did that. Plus, he put a lot of his what's his one in the early 90s. He put this out right after that album. So some Harvest Moon, right? Yeah, Harvest Moon.
Yeah.
So he did this right after Harvest Moon. So I love that album. Put a lot of that music on there. Plus, it's mostly his 70s stuff. So it makes a great compilation, and his music's made for Unplugged. So you can just, he's got some great stuff with Crazy Horse. Don't get me wrong, but this is really good stuff. I mean, all the way from the old Laughing Lady to Kick It Off to his newer stuff from Hink to Hendrix and everything in between. I mean, the Needle and the Damaged Done's on there. You got what else? Mr. Soul, when he was singing that with his buddy there, right? What else do we got? Helpless. I love that from CSNY. Just lots of good stuff on there. So anyways, that's my last one. Sorry for not a Neil Young fan like Chapo that comes to our chat room. Can't stand him, but he's one of my favorites through the 70s. And I used to go to the Live Rust movie in 79 and watch it over and over and over.
Right.
At the late night theater. So
I think about around that time, or maybe a year later, I saw at the LA Forum, Neil Young and Stone Temple Pilots were opening up for him.
was that when he was getting his little grunge stage? Or
Yeah.
He did that good too on his Mirror album. I think that's a good album. So
well, it's like, a lot of those guys like idolized him.
Yeah. And he came out and put out that Mirror Ball or whatever it is, Mirror
Ball, yeah.
Yeah. It was good.
So.
I'm done.
All right, Steve.
Okay. Number 5. Everybody's got their own guilty pleasures. It's a band that you absolutely love. May not be progressive, may not be rock, may not be jazz. It's just a band that you absolutely, positively love. And you really can't describe why you absolutely, positively love the band. But it's a band that's been near and dear to your heart since the very first time you heard the band. Okay, this is certainly not progressive. It is rock. It is political rock. I refer to this band as the Righteous Thunder from Down Under. They're known as Midnight Oil.
Yes.
One of the most political bands in the world. Always has been, always will be, although I believe now they've finally broken up for good. I caught them in 2017 on what they called the Great Circle Tour, which was their next to last tour. This was the tour They hadn't gotten together in about 25 years. They got together and did a full world tour, and I saw them in San Francisco. Absolutely blew the roof off of the Fox Theater in San Francisco. I've been a fan of this band ever since I saw a video of theirs on, I believe it was called Night Tracks on the Turner Broadcasting System way back in the early days of cable on a wasted Saturday night after I came home from a gig as a saxophone player, and just absolutely blew me away and blew me away ever since. They had a 1993 album called Earth and Sun and Moon. That again, one of my favorite Midnight Oil albums. There were no hits on this album. They really only had one big hit in America, and that was 1988, Beds Are Burning, from an album called Diesel and Dust, which may be their best album, but it is certainly not for all people. It is rock with a slice of pop in it. It is absolutely music with a message. The nice thing that I really like about the band is the lyrics are both specific to Australian history and Australian matters, but also universal in nature, where it can fit anywhere in the world. Just a brilliant band from a musician standpoint, a lot better musicians than you may give them credit for when you hear the albums, and absolutely killer live, just absolutely in your face with the power and the passion live.
Cool.
I love that pick, Steve. Another good one. I was there for the one you just talked about, Diesel and Dust, but the one I really got into was the one after that, which was Blue Sky Mine.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big hit. Well, at least it was a college hit because they played it all the time. Blue Sky Mine.
Yeah.
So that's my album, the one I actually owned during that time period.
Those are their two best known albums, but got them all. Just brilliant stuff.
I gotta go back.
I wore my Midnight Oil t-shirt today, but I didn't.
Yeah. Now I got to get to their future stuff too. And I'm sure I've heard a couple off the newer songs, the newer albums, but they were great. So I need to do that.
Yeah, got a lot of great picks.
Yeah, it's a great mix.
A good variety.
Yeah, Steve came through, man.
Yep. Thank you for having.
Hey,
and
Steve.
I now blame Ron for popping my YouTube cherry.
This is my second time, so I'm a sophomore. Hey, Steve, what I heard you had a show on Monday nights. What's the name of it, and where can we find it?
I actually have two shows. The one on Monday night is not really a nod to IQ, even though the title of the show is The Seventh House. I just thought that was a real good title for a very interesting radio program. I am on the House of Prog, www.houseofprog.com.
Nice.
The live show goes Monday evenings, 8 p.m. until 10:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Yep. And Steve's show is super cool because, like you say, you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. So you get the prog, but he'll throw in some stuff. You'll throw in some stuff that, where'd that come from? And I remember that.
The only thing I can tell people for sure about my program is I will play Yes.
Yes, we know that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
What about you, Chuck? You got a show.
Oh, I do Game of Prague on Tuesday nights at 5:30 Central Time. Thank you, Ron. Yeah. It used to be Beginners, which was very neo-prog, and it's all on podcast. And I still love that. Don't get me wrong, but I just, as you go on, your taste expand, and I needed to expand my format to something else besides that. So hopefully if you try it out, I usually feature a guest every week. So the first half hour to 45 minutes is a new album that was just released. So with the artist in the chat room. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I honestly, I've been meaning to catch your stuff, but it's usually the time when I figure out that you're on, you're already off. And it's like, shit.
Yeah.
And I gotta try to. I think I need to get myself a calendar.
It's all right.
For this guy's on that.
What's cool, Ron, is I got, England's going to bed, obviously, or UK 11:30, or Europe, whatever. So I always had that first half hour, so they can do that from there to midnight. And I do have a nice little contingent of people that will stay for that first half hour, 45 minutes before they go to bed.
Right.
I can see the
Chuck?
numbers
Right.
drop off.
Hey, Chuck,
Yeah.
if they can't listen to your live, where can they listen to you?
Oh, yeah. Podcast.progrock.com. Just, or you can actually, I don't know about you, Steve, but you can actually go in and get the progrock.com app, which you can listen live, but also on iTunes or anything, if you type in the name of the show, even though it's not a thing you'd find in their library, you can add it in and you can get the feed right into your phone.
Yes, you
And
can.
all those great shows. I
Yep.
mean, we have ones jazz, we have fusion, we have avant-garde, we have metal, and then you got my stuff, which is pretty mainstream, and a few other shows like that. So thank you, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm the same way. You can find me on any of the streaming services. I'm on iTunes. I'm on podcasts at Google, podcasts at Amazon. I'm now on Pandora. All you do is go into those search engines, type in the Seventh House podcast, and you'll get both the Seventh House and my jazz program as well.
Cool.
So it's out there all the time.
Thanks.
In the same way with your show.
Yep.
Yeah. it's-
Internet radio is where to be, especially from a progressive music standpoint. Because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
internet radio
I'm not-
DJs that are pushing the limit.
Right. I'm not a big talker, Steve, but I try to play great music and introduce the songs and things. But some other DJs like to, really describe what they're playing, and that's good too. It's just whatever you want.
That's
You have
right.
different DJs that do different things.
So yeah, you got your shows are also a great place for people if they don't know the bands or they used to listen to them and they just dropped off the radar and they went on to other things. I was very notorious for doing that. I went through phases where I would only listen to a certain kind of music, and now I'm looking back and I'm like going, that's the person you don't want to be. You want to be a person that is open to anything. I mean, listen to it once, and if you don't like it, you said, "Hey, I tried it." But
Right.
don't just, just because it's not in your wheelhouse doesn't mean it's not going to be good.
Right. Being a tax accountant, maybe because the numbers and stuff, the program for beginners, what you might find is cool is that it was all brand new for me. So I did it with the listener at the time in year by year. So the whole thing was year by year. Worked me all the way up to 2018. And there was just so much stuff that now I'm just doing new music because it took me 25 shows to get through 18.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of great stuff. So, hey, I'm really glad you guys could join. And you guys were lifesavers because this almost became a solo show. And would have been 15 minutes, because I do tend to kind of talk fast about what I like, and so it would have been 50 minutes. And I appreciate that you guys
Thanks
took
for
the
having
time
us.
out of your day. And
It's my pleasure.
we're gonna next month. I don't have the exact date, but next month we're gonna tackle 1998. So if it should be interesting choices because I think, I always have to go look on my computer and type in albums from a certain year to see if, because I always don't really remember the years that some of these things came out. I just remember that I like them. So it's like to 1998, but I think once we break through, and I think in December we're going to be doing 2003. I think that's where the modern era is where people are gonna find a lot of good stuff. And I stopped these shows at the 20-year mark because the stuff that comes out 15 and 10 and 5 years, while they're good stuff, they're not really they're not in your blood circulation yet. They're there. It's just they're not all enough for you to like go, yeah, that was my favorite one.
Hey, it's your show.
I mean, it's like, it could have been, favorite of the day, and then you forget about it a year or two later, and I'm sure you guys ran into albums like that.
Sure.
And
You're looking more for the classics, the ones that stay with you.
oh yeah. So thank you again. And Steve, you didn't break the how do you say
The
the
internet.
style of it. It was like well, I can't say it like that, but I even though it's a lot of the bands that I interview are progressive rock. This show is like for people to talk about their favorite albums, no matter what the genre, because we all we're not all in, only progressive rock, and anything else, we won't listen to, but it's just out there, and it gives people out there ideas that if they hadn't heard any of the titles that we talked about today, they can go out and explore and see if it's something that they like.
Absolutely.
Sure. All right.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Ron.
All right. Thank you,
Have a
guys.
good one. See you guys later.
You too.
Bye, guys.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.